everyone. This is John Daly with the Daily Grind. I'm doing something different this week. Instead of a newsletter, I'm doing an up close and personal interview with a couple of guys who I've been a huge fan of for literally decades. Marc Hutner and Josh Blum of the rock band Sugartooth. How are you guys doing today?
Good
Doing
thing.
great. Thanks for having us, John.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you guys have a brand new album coming out. It's your third one. It's called Volume 3. This will be Sugartooth's first album in, I believe, 27 years. I'm glad you didn't make us wait too long, your fans.
We like to,
The
we
first
like
two
to spit them
singles,
out as soon as we get them.
yeah,
Keep them
exactly,
pumping.
exactly. So the first two singles, I've Been What You've Become and Buried, they are now out on Spotify, Apple Music, or in wherever else you get your streaming music. They're great. They're fantastic. You guys haven't missed a beat. Um, I was going to get into the band's history in a minute, but the big question I have is what sparked this reunion? How is it that after all this time, your fans are finally getting some new, long-awaited Sugartooth music?
On my end, um, I was kind of I got burnt out from music in the 90s, at the end of the 90s, and took a break that ended up taking, some 20 odd years. Um, and I just started realizing how much I missed it all. How much I missed the process of writing and playing and performing. Um, and so I just really, it started gnawing at me. Um, I made the decision to sort of take a break because I was burnt out. Then also I was, going on 30, and I was like, am I still going to be playing the same clubs at 30 that I was at 18? And I started getting a little bummed out, and kind of cut that part of my life off. And later on realized how important it was for me, just as a musician and artist, and uh, uh, just a creative human being, to not let that sit on the sidelines, especially for something as silly as ego. And as we get older, then I was 29, now I'm 52. Um, I've learned a lot about my ego, and I've learned that it drives a lot of my decisions and not the best decision maker. So yeah, so I really just wanted to jump back into it and started writing songs, and sending them to Mark. I was still in Los Angeles at the time. Mark was in New York, um, and uh, and so that was sort of my impetus. Mark, you want to?
Yeah. Yeah, I think Josh and I both hit a wall at the end of the second Sugartooth record, and we stopped. I picked up again shortly after with another band that I was in for years, but and then I
What?
relocated to New. So I didn't tell Josh that. No, I relocated to New York, and it slowly morphed out of being a performer and writer, and you know started another chapter of my life. Um, and then the pandemic hit, and being in a New York apartment, a small New York apartment with my wife and son, and not going into work, and just like everybody else, you're isolated. My solace was music again, and I withdrew into it, and I did deep dives into. I found that the current music, wasn't the right soundtrack for the sort of stress and anxiety and angst that I was feeling. So I started doing a deeper dive into hard rock, the kind of stuff that I would have listened to as a teenager. Um, and really sort of that spoke to me again. And it was really nice to be able to tap into something that was, channeling what I was feeling. And then um, a documentary had come out, I guess now 2 years ago, during the pandemic, that Josh, Joey Castillo, and I were in as part of it's called Underground Inc., and it was about the '90s and how the major labels gobbled up any band that was alternative or sounded somewhat like Nirvana, and then spat them out the moment they didn't have an instant single. And most of the bands in the documentary imploded because of that. We arguably one of those. And I just had a moment where I was like, this is not the story arc that I want to be part of. This. I don't want to be. That's such a cliche. So I think I was even on the sofa and I texted Josh, I texted Joey, and I was like, we're all still alive. We're all still friends. We all still play. Let's make a record again with no care in the world for radio singles and management and labels, blah, 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 blah. And of course they signed on, and now it was up to Josh and myself to actually, let's do this. And so, being the primary writers of the band. And so we did, we started, writing. Josh and I mostly, almost entirely wrote it, in different rooms in different states, over files back and forth. And my take on it is it was incredible. And one of the things that I learned about myself and my ego during the pandemic was that I cannot and should not deny that I'm an artist, and I always have been, and I can't. I can close the door and pretend like I've moved on to part 2 of my life. But at the end of the day, if there isn't some sort of creation going on, I'm not fulfilled. And what I love about Sugartooth is that, it's one thing to write songs on my own, but the truth is I am really aware of my limitations, and I flourish with co-writers, and I flourish with Josh as a co-writer. And I think that he and I have such a rhythm, so to speak. But like we speak the same language musically, and it's just amazing when we start writing. It's like I can't imagine doing this with anybody else. It's such a natural process for the two of us. So that's how it started, and it just became this like very what's the word I'm looking for? It was an incredible process. I was in heaven when I could put my son to sleep and it was 10 at night, and I could retreat into a bedroom and start writing lyrics and stuff to Josh's tracks, and that was like that saved my life for that last year.
I was going to bed.
What's that?
I said I was going to bed at 10.
Yeah, he was the child I was putting to bed.
I got you.
I've been what you become. I've been what you become. And I've been where you belong. I've been where you belong. Always in your mind, desperate, unkind, violently clawing at you. The voice in your head says, better off dead. You're not the person I knew.
So speaking of that chemistry that you're describing there, like a lot of fans, I was first turned on to you guys back in 1994. That's when your self-titled album came out. The early 90s, of course, was a very exciting time in music. You guys are originally from Southern California, as you mentioned. Can you talk a little bit about when you met each other and how you formed the band and eventually ended up with that major record label?
Sure. So the majority of the band started out basically as a band with a different singer. It was a band called She Died, ... And Mark was in another band called Hard Comfort.
Something like that. Something regrettable like that. Yeah.
It was, but so our two bands had played together in LA clubs a lot. And Mark was always like his band sucked. No offense, John Zagahi. They didn't suck. Mark was the star of the band, and definitely was like the one that shined.
Sure.
Our band was good, but our singer sucked. So we eventually got rid of the singer, and we were auditioning different people and trying out different people. And my brother, I have a twin brother, his girlfriend happened to date Marc Hutner before started dating my brother. And so she said that we should call up Mark. And so we did, and we had him come down. And out of all the people that had auditioned for us, Mark he hit all the beats right. Any sort of pause, he would put the right feeling vocally on there. And it just like as soon as we jammed with him after he left. We were all like, that's the dude. And that was me and Joey, and at the time Tim Grews, who was the guitar player who played guitar on the first record along with Mark, and I think Dave Fortman, right?
Yeah.
Dave Fortman, who went on to Ugly Kid Joe, and then he became a producer. I think he produced Evanescence and a bunch of stuff. And Mark was just the singer, no guitar. And eventually, Dave Fortman left to join Ugly Kid Joe, which was great for us, because then Mark picked up the guitar, and we were just all like, "Where did that come from?" It was so good. Woo! It's an illusion. That was my Doug Henning, in case anybody's asking. But it was like, oh my God, this is so perfect. His playing was so fantastic, and he and Tim sort of worked really well together, and that was basically how we came together.
Great.
And then later,
You'd mentioned that a lot of these bands, the record labels were going after these bands. Can you talk about that experience, about how you broke through that door?
Sure. We had originally actually been signed to Capitol Records, and I don't know if you ever got that tape that we would hand out that called "We Are Really Good." No, sorry about that.
I've seen it online, but I no, I didn't get it.
So originally we had recorded an EP for Capitol Records, and that was what ended up being the "We Are Really Good" demo tape that we were passing around. So we got signed to Capitol Records. Like right after we got signed, the president of Capitol Records was sort of relieved of his duties, and then they were bringing somebody new in, and that guy pretty much, for the most part, cleared house on new bands that were being signed under the old president's watch that hadn't released records. Luckily enough for us, Geffen was also interested, and there was a bit of a bidding war in the beginning between Geffen and Capitol. And we were so young and sure of ourselves. We were like, of course there's a bidding war for us. Not really like, oh my God, that's pretty cool. But so luckily for us, Todd Sullivan, who had originally wanted to sign us at Geffen Records, he also had signed Weezer and a couple other things at Geffen, came in and bought out the contract from Capitol. So we were able to get the rights to that EP, and we use that as basically just sort of a tape that we would hand out to people when we were touring, and then went in and recorded the whole record for Geffen. Do you remember? Did I miss anything, Mark?
You're a little bit off. The record that Geffen put out was completely done for Capitol when we were dropped, and Geffen just bought it from Capitol and put it out. So we didn't record it for Geffen, but we got paid twice for it, so it was great.
Oh, nice, nice. So here in Denver, your song "Sold My Fortune" got a lot of radio play, as it did across the country. And it received some extra promotional help along the way from a couple of kids on MTV. Can you guys talk about, who those two were, let everybody know, and also what that experience was like becoming part of what was really sort of a pop culture phenomenon?
I remember very well when it happened. I don't remember how. I guess we were probably alerted before it had happened, I'm guessing. And, for those of us old enough to remember, it was, like you're saying, it was a cultural phenomenon. It was every moment of every day, Beavis and Butthead were on MTV. And it was a taste making or taste breaking opportunity for bands. So I don't know how or why, but they picked our video and they enjoyed it. And I just remember being, one of them, Beavis or Butthead, was talking about the lyrics and making fun of sold my fortune, and thinking I said sold my futon, but when they're talking, I remember saying he probably wants to sell his bed, and I remember thinking when they're saying they're talking about me, and it just really was very surreal to have that going on. being called out, so to speak, by Beavis and Butthead.
Whoa. Check this out, Butthead. It's like, it starts out pretty cool, and it's like, starts rocking more and more. Watch, check it out. Here it comes. Yeah.
Okay.
Check it out. Yeah, it's right here. It's right here. Here it comes.
I get the point, Beavis. Now will you shut up so I can hear it?
Yeah.
But I don't know to what extent it propelled our career success or the success of that song. I'm sure that it did, but I don't really have any sort of metrics. But because things were at that point, things were up and running and happening, and we were touring like 300 days a year, and KNAC, the hard rock station in Southern California, was playing the song relentlessly, and we had so much so that we had to put the record out before we had planned, and I think that became the single before we'd even decided on it, because KNAC had already taken it under the wing. So things were happening, and but Beavis and Butthead it continues probably to be how we're remembered most.
It is, like, if you look on YouTube, or Reddit, or search for Sugartooth, like I have before.
Ego.
Yeah. Just trying to find our fans. So many of the people that discovered us through Beavis and Butthead, or even Daria. For whatever reason, we've never met Mike Judge, but he's put us in a few of his shows. God bless him. And it's been great. The interesting thing about Beavis and Butthead, and when we went on first, we were really worried. We didn't know what they were going to say, right? If you're getting on Beavis and Butthead, they're either going to trash you or they're going to think that you rock. And so I remember
you were wingers, so that was good.
Yeah, totally. I remember being super nervous about what they were going to, how these two cartoon characters were going to judge us. Luckily, they thought we rocked, and so that helped. But what was interesting was shortly before that, like, White Zombie's career really got jump started by that Beavis and Butthead episode that they were on, and there was just like, you could see from the moment before they were on, their sales before they were on Beavis and Butthead to the moment after they were on Beavis and Butthead, it just exploded for them. And that was when Beavis and Butthead was on at like 4 p.m. for kids to see. Shortly after that, before we made it to air, some kid lit their room on fire because of Beavis. I don't know if you remember that, Mark. And so they stopped airing it during the day and started airing it at 10 o'clock at night. And that changed how many people saw it. And I remember conversations like, if we were able to be in this 4 o'clock time slot, like the record company thinking that sales would have been, much bigger than if, than being relegated to the 10 o'clock time slot where teenagers aren't, or kids aren't really seeing it. So that was interesting. So if that kid didn't light his room on fire, we'd be huge. I'd be in a castle probably right now.
Sure.
I mean, my wife loves castles. What am I gonna do?
That's interesting. Yeah, no, you're right. It really, you think you said it was a make or break type thing, and yeah, there were bands that kind of had the nail in the coffin put there by Beavis and Butthead. But no, it's great. And
Totally.
Clearly, Mike Judge, and you mentioned that about Mike Judge. I think that he, the songs are based on what Beavis and Butthead liked. I think they were really probably based on the stuff that he liked, which was that's cool that he was into your stuff. I didn't know about the Daria stuff. I'll have to check
And
that
like
out.
the Daria ones were, if I remember correctly, it was some some older teenage dude who had a beat up car. Every time he pulled up, he was listening to Sugartooth. It wasn't.
I don't remember that at all.
No, but it was like the Hesher dude that was listening to the Tooth. So that's kind of funny.
That's cool. You mentioned about reaching out to your fans a second ago. So Josh and I met online many years ago. I think it was in 1996. To be clear, this wasn't like an online dating situation. He found that I was a fan out on the web. I was sort of an early adopter of the World Wide Web, and I had set up this sort of Sugartooth tribute page. I'm just telling this for people that don't know the story. You guys know the story, but just because I really like the band. But anyway, Josh reached out in an email. You were very cool. You told me about the second album you guys were working on, and I decided at that point that you guys really did deserve sort of a better internet presence than you had. So I sort of spruced up the page, registered it with all the search engines. There were a bunch back then, Web Crawler, Yahoo, Alta Vista, all these things you don't really think about anymore.
AOL.
Oh yeah, AOL, yeah, and added lots of, I added a lot of news and photos, and it sort of became your guys' sort of unspoken official website, and I had a lot of fun with it. And you mentioned when your second album came out, that was The Sounds of Solid. I thought it was fantastic. By design, it had a different sound than the first one, and it was very cool. It introduced me, among other things, to the great Rudy Ray Moore in Dolomite. I did not know anything about that. I went out to
Yeah,
Blockbuster and rented it after that, and it was just
it's a movie.
such a fantastic, life-changing experience.
You're under arrest. You're gonna have to take me! One more move and you're dead.
But
The Rudy Ray Moore thing came through the Dust Brothers, who produced that record, because we weren't really familiar with Rudy Ray Moore, and they were just playing around, scratching it into a song. What was it, Club Foot, right? Yeah,
yeah,
into
Yeah.
Club Foot, and we just couldn't stop laughing. We just, we thought it was the funniest thing. And originally they were just messing around, and then when we heard it without it, it just felt empty,
Yeah.
right? It felt like it was missing something. So we ended up, contacting Rudy Ray Moore and, licensing it from him. We were even talking to his manager. He was interested in doing, I don't know if you saw the movie with Eddie Murphy,
Yep.
but he was just, he was always looking for an angle. And he actually was asking us about backing him up as a rock band, which would have been an amazing experience, but it never happened. But that would have been so fun.
The thing that surprised me, and I guess going a little off topic here, but with that Netflix special with Eddie Murphy, that movie, I was always under the impression, having watched that movie, that it wasn't really supposed to be funny. It was sort of unintentionally funny for the most part, but
Right.
apparently no, it was really meant to be funny. So I thought that was
Yeah, he was in on the joke, which was great, which I had no idea either. I just thought it was just bad acting, bad, cinematography, and bad stunts, but nope, it's all planned.
yeah. When that second one came out, though, you're like, okay, it's definitely meant to be funny this time. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I guess it was all along. But going back to the Sounds of Solid, I was sort of surprised that the record label didn't promote it better than it did, especially online, because by then, the web was becoming bigger, and I know other bands had a good presence. Was that the same sense that you guys got, that they didn't put the time into it or the effort into it that they should have in promoting
I
it?
think that so making that record and pivoting as we did sonically and songwriting, it was intentional on our part. Like, we didn't want to make the same record again, and we were changing. The music of the era was changing, and Joey had departed the band, and so it was largely just Josh and myself at that point, and so we were looking for another sort of opportunity of an outlet and creativity, and the Dust Brothers had done the Beastie Boys, and that was those were records that Josh and all of us had listened to for years on tour, and listening to how incredible, like, in that genre, you wouldn't just have a guitar player playing a track all the way through. Like, you would, because you were sampling so much, there would be one guitar tone, another guitar tone, another, all within like the first verse. And so it really attracted us, how like the ear candy of that. And so that was our approach to that record. We weren't sampled, but let's record every guitar. Every song was going to have 2 or 3 different guitars and amps so that we can pick and choose different parts that we would mute or whatever. So anyways, we made this record that was different. One of the problems was that at the very same time that we were recording that record at Conway Studios with the Dust Brothers, they were also finishing the touches on Beck's Odelay record in that studio next door to us. And so the producers were going back and forth, and that record came out before ours and of course exploded. And like any major label, you've got something that's booming, that's where all the attention goes, and doesn't matter what comes next. We were just sort of like an albatross at that point. That's my take on it. I felt like, not that we're not comparable to Beck and the records were so different, but as far as the machine of a label putting energy and money behind something that's already, now it's happening a month or so before we were done with our record, I think we paid the price.
Yeah, I would say that there's that, and then there's also, if I don't know if you remember this, Mark, but there were 2 in the record company at the time. You know, you've got people who work music to rock, hard rock, and heavy metal radio, and then you had a separate team working music to alternative rock, and those rarely meshed, especially through the early 90s. Later on, when we did release Sounds of Solid, that was changing a little bit, right? So K-Rock in LA, which was like the tastemaker station, started playing White Zombie, and they started playing, I think, Limp Bizkit, and they started playing, guitar bands. Which was something that was different, heavier guitar bands, which was something different that they didn't used to do. For whatever reason, the alternative rock department, radio department at Geffen wouldn't work our music to K-Rock or to those labels, or to those stations. They didn't feel that they would get any return on it. They didn't think it fit. I don't know if there was a personality issue somewhere down the road. I know that we've heard stories that maybe our managers early on stepped on some toes. I know we certainly stepped on some toes at certain points with fueled by our ego again. But for whatever reason, they refused to work it to alternative rock radio, and that was your only real option to get played on the radio. I think KNAC was gone at that point. Most stations were sort of converting. So that the lack of push from the label to alternative rock radio also really sort of killed the record.
Good
Well,
point.
it was a great record. Even if it wasn't a commercial success.
It wasn't a commercial success. I think there's some really cool stuff on it. And it was always a very divisive record, no doubt, because of the shift in our approach to recording. And we kind of ended, like Mark was saying, music was changing, our tastes were changing. We wanted to just, as artists and writers, we wanted to expand on our sound. But also, since Joey left, and it was so hard to replace that guy because he's such a ridiculously good drummer, we started using and writing to drum loops and samples. So as a mechanism for us to keep creating, we started using the machines. And then that also sort of dictated where we wanted to go production-wise. We were the first rock band that the Dust Brothers ever produced, and so it was just a fun kind of experiment for both of us.
So now it's 2023, and things have changed a lot in the music business. The CD, of course, was the prominent music medium back in the 1990s when Sugartooth first hit the scene. Now streaming is where everything's at. As musicians, I'm curious, how are you two adapting to this new world? It seems, from my perspective, like you're navigating it pretty well. Between the YouTube videos, going on Ozzy's Boneyard, everything else. And I realize that, Mark, you kept active in the music business as well. But does it feel like this, what we have today, is just a completely different landscape than it used to be?
Yes, that's an understatement. You know, I'll leave it to a point, and I'll turn it over to Josh because he's much more in the weeds on this stuff. But when we finished the record, this volume 3, and we had the very the realization that, okay, now what do we do? I don't think either of us, conceptually, we know in streaming, and like I work, like you mentioned, I work in the business side of the industry as well. But now it's our stuff, and now, and so we had to, like, wait a second, and thankfully, our old manager, we'd sent to a few people, and he'd come into the city, and Josh and I, we all went to breakfast. We had a breakfast meeting, and he very kindly offered to assist us in putting this record out, knowing probably that Josh and I were a little bit at a loss, and he not so much at a loss. And so, out of the kindness of his heart, and because he considered us part of his heritage, and he apparently thinks very highly of the record, and thought, let me just do this for you. So he and his team at Scout B have, which is just him and a guy named Evan, have been like really, really hands-on and helping Josh do the work, because at the end of the day, I can barely sign on to my email. I still don't understand. I've turned into my father. I don't know how to do anything, but Josh has some savvy in it, and he's our artist, so he sort of interfaces with our management and has taken this thing to where it is now. Josh, take it away.
Yes. Well, thank you, Mark. Yeah, no, it's so very different. One, not having an entire record company just to go in, and like, we used to go into the record company, and we would just clear their closet of free CDs, and have order lunch, and I mean, like, they would take care of us like we were little babies, and we were. So not having somebody to, we still have somebody holding our hand, but we don't have somebody wiping our mouths as much. But it's so different in that, how do you get your music out there? How do you find your audience besides doing searches on Reddit like I do, and YouTube and Instagram and all that? And then we're finding, okay, there's an audience, part of our audience is here on Facebook, some is on Instagram, and they refuse to go on Facebook, and some are just go on YouTube, and some are only on Reddit, and some are, it's really, it's crazy. But the sort of the strategy that our manager, Scout B, have put together, we're starting to see that a return on that, and finding, finding our audience. We're seeing the stream rates on Apple and Spotify go up every week, and so it's been slow going, but I mean, we've only been out for, I think, 4 weeks now, 3 weeks, but we're definitely finding our people again, and finding new people. And it's cool because, it's like you see the analytics, and you see, okay, so our main audience right now is 45 to like 55. But then the next largest, right? So then the next largest group is 18 to 25. So I was really surprised about that. So the idea that there's kids out there that are listening to guitar-based music and heavier music is, one, it's just exciting to know, and that they're also starting to listen to us, which is great. So we know that there's not only our existing audience out there, but there's a new audience for us to play to as well. But as far as getting to them, it's a chore, man.
I've always think about this when years ago, I had a friend that was friends of the son or daughter of the actor Jamie Farr, who played Klinger on MASH,
What?
and I remember hearing like they'd come over the house after school, and Jamie Farr was sitting sort of in the dark, just watching reruns of MASH all day.
Oh,
And when Josh, when I hear you speak about how you go online and looking for fans, I can't help but think about you being.
well, I'm not doing it to just hold on, guys. I feel like this needs to be clarified here. I'm not doing it just to pump up my ego. I'm doing it to let them know that there's new music out there, and hey, we're back. Let's hook up. Want to make out? Something like that. You know.
You bring up a good point about younger people being into this type of music, and it's something I've noticed. And I had to kind of so I went to I noticed this at a number of concerts. I still go to quite a few, and I saw the Toadies a few months ago. They're doing their anniversary tour. They came through Denver, and I was stunned that most people in this packed audience. It was a sold out show. Were like in their early 20s. They had to be in their early 20s
That's
singing
awesome.
along to every song there. And I'm like, how do you guys? I'm like, it's just it's strange to me. So I was asking around. I've asked some other people. When I'm shopping, I sometimes wear a concert T-shirt. I'll have a Tool shirt on, and someone, a teenager will come up to me going, "Oh, you know who they are?" I'm like, "Yeah, that was my
Yeah.
era. How do you know who
You
they
know
are?"
who they are?
Well, that's
So
so interesting.
what's
Go
that?
ahead.
Yeah,
What are
well,
you saying?
Guitar Hero, that video game, that
Mhm.
apparently got a lot of, especially during the pandemic, got a lot of younger people into music they didn't otherwise listen to. That's what I keep hearing. I thought that's kind of
That's
interesting.
cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure that does. I'm sure it's all these things, I I always marvel at the fact with how hard the world is and has been the last while that other than like a small genre of music, like the music really doesn't reflect that. And I went to go see, like many of us, I'm sure we went to go see Rage Against the Machine do the reunion a year and a half ago now. And I mean, it was like whether you like the band or not, they channeled uh, I think a lot of the what the world is feeling, and like the reaction was unbelievable in Madison Square Garden, and it just felt so genuine, and so it pleases me. I don't know why, like I feel like hard rock or rock, uh, is I guess for me the music that should um, uh, mirror or reflect or be influenced by the political situation, just everything. It's because it's such a heavy. I feel like there's so much emotion in life right now and has been, and for me that taps into it. And so I'm very pleased for whether it's guitar, these video games or whatever, that it is having a moment with younger people. And I'd heard somewhere that guitar sales are up for the first time in maybe a decade. So as a guitar player, of course, that pleases me very much.
Are you selling some guitars?
Yeah, so DM me if you're interested in the Les Paul because I've got 4.
So do you guys have any plans of doing any live shows or touring for the new album?
I certainly hope so. I want to play. I'd love to play as soon as possible. Touring is going to be a little more difficult, just because we're in our 50s and we have young children still. But yeah, we don't have anything lined up, but we're definitely planning on doing something, and
Yeah, I
hopefully.
think it'll probably be strategic one-offs or a few offs in different markets. I'm hoping, but we're sort of watching this record roll out and see what the appetite is for it. Certainly, it seems like there's an appetite for us to perform live, and but we don't want to. I don't have much interest in them. Josh doesn't either. Like getting a band together and going to tour and playing for 20 people. I think so. We want to make sure that if we're going to do it, we're going to do it properly, and so but the good thing is like our manager reminded us, is like, for better or for worse, your music is not timely. So that means there's no pressure. Like, just do it right. Roll it out as you want it. It's not going to be like in a year. It's not going to be, not in fashion anymore, because it's actually not in fashion right now. So we're having like a musical dialogue with our fans or people that are fans of hard rock, and they will always be. So we're taking our time to make sure that we do this right and not no regrets this time.
Mark's got stage fright.
I got stage fright. No, I do have to lose about 20 pounds. So I can't. There's no way. There's no way.
Fantastic. Look at you.
I couldn't perform 60 minutes singing and trying to keep up with your dance moves. There's no way.
Nobody's expecting you to keep up with my dance moves. That's ridiculous. That's never happen.
So my last question has to do with the album cover art for Volume 3 and also the merchandise. I'm actually wearing a Sugartooth shirt right here. Josh, you are the artist behind all this. I was telling you before we went on the air, this is just fantastic. I didn't know this was a talent of yours. Can you talk a little bit about your art background?
Sure. Yeah. I after high school, I went to art school and was fortunate enough to get a partial scholarship, which was very exciting for my parents because my high school career was not marked with anything special outside of me not going to high school or just, ditching a lot. So we were all worried about where I was going to go. And so I got into art school and went to art school for a year. And I didn't want to be in art school. I didn't want to be anywhere in any school. Which was my problem. And now I'm like, I wish I was in a school. I wish I would have paid attention. So I went to art school and then dropped out after a year to go on the road with my band. So I started touring at like 19 and kind of put the art stuff aside, except for just, doodling and my own sort of private stuff. After Sugartooth, I had a brief stint where I was doing graphics for like T-shirts, and so like I was doing graphics that were in like Hot Topic and a lot of those mall shops, Forever 21, things like that. And then after like a year or two doing that, I couldn't draw any more butterflies or palm trees. That was a lot of what I was doing. But so I started painting, and I never stopped just exercising that muscle, whether it was painting or digital design or sketching, whatever it was. There's something that I did a long time ago.
It takes two, baby.
Two, baby.
In my office.
Nice. Mark made a ceramic mug I should be drinking coffee out of right now. Go on. So anyway, I never stopped exercising that muscle, was always designing and painting and drawing and doing graphic design stuff and T-shirts. And our first two album covers, I was telling you a little bit about this before, I didn't want to be involved with the art or the visual imagery of Sugartooth early on. I was really just, I want to be the, part of the songwriting team, and I want to be the bass player. And I'd love to get somebody else's take on what our imagery is and what they see, when they hear us. And unfortunately, I didn't like anything that people saw when they heard us. At least the stuff that was making it to to our album cover. So I was really disappointed in the first album cover. I was disappointed even more in the second album cover, and I didn't want to be disappointed in the third album cover. So I got to work and started pumping out different ideas. I came across or stumbled upon the idea for the surveillance camera. Like I think that was like the third design I had worked out, and I just really, I really liked the imagery of it. I liked the sparseness of it, and I also liked because I think about the surveillance, the feeling of the surveillance state, and the idea of privacy and kind of the irony that we're also like, it's like, okay, there's a security camera watching us. That's so intrusive, but at the same time, we're giving, every company who asks all of our data, all of our information. When we were younger, filling out forms, they didn't ask for social security numbers. I don't remember on everything. Right now, like I was filling out something for my son's dentist appointment the other day, and they were asking for like everybody in the family's social security number, and so that is really just sort of a representation of how we're being surveilled, how little privacy we have. But it's not just those cameras, it's that we are willingly we're giving people so much more than what those pictures are taking. You know what I mean? Like those cameras are the least of our problems. And so that was sort of like the impetus for me to just sort of, I like the idea of that and exploring that. And I think we're going to be exploring that a little bit in our next video as well, for a song called Sing On, which I'll send to you. Yeah, so it really just hit a nerve for me, and I was just really excited to find that. Now I also just hit on some bitching artwork for Sing On, and so like I kind of want to flip everything and make Sing On artwork the volume 3 artwork, but I'm not going to do that because I don't have time.
No, but the visual process for us on this one was a little bit like the writing process that I was describing, where it just was like, oh my God, this is so easy. Like Josh and I were meant to create music together, and so when I remember on the second record, Josh, even though you didn't want to be the artist, you were certainly taking stabs at at concepts that we could maybe turn over.
Right.
So, it was a struggle for neither of us had a vision for it. But on this record, at least lyrically, this record is much more defined. I'm singing about specific things, whether the audience knows it or not. And the theme, and the record is written coming through the last few years and the pandemic and the political insanity and all that. And so it was easier to come to like, well, let's like almost like this 1984 Orwellian idea, and Josh just ran with it. And it was instant, and all of a sudden now we have like a template for the videos, and it mirrors a lot of the lyrics, and so it was unlike the first two records. Like I don't know, what do you? It just started happening, and this has been like a really enjoyable and easy collaboration, both musically and artistically. Certainly, I had no hand in the actual art, so it's been really easy for me. But again, I convey an idea that I'm thinking to Josh, and he's off and running, and it's amazing. It's amazing artist.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah, it's great. That's an interesting story. That is fascinating. I'm curious. Speaking of the artwork too, are there any plans to put Volume 3 out on vinyl?
There are. We're looking into that right now, and we're looking into a gatefold album. So I got to come up with more artwork.
Yeah. So we like. So
Liz, text me.
I am a record collector of sorts, and it kills me. I'm a collector in general, but it kills me that we've never really had, other than the 45, anything. And so, like, if we're doing this again in the spirit of let's do this right, let's do this. And so I'm pushing for. I know Josh is on board too, but I want to do a record. I want 180 gram. I want gatefold. I want full color lyrics print. I want the tactile experience of listening to vinyl that we all grew up on, and how a record became even better because you got involved in like whatever, trying to decipher are the symbols on the Aussie album, do they actually mean anything or whatever it is. I want to be able to provide that experience. So we are looking in fact, I'm just going to say yes, we are pressing certainly the new record on vinyl, and we got the go ahead to press the first two. So we're exploring that as well to put them all out, hopefully sometime this year, before the end of the year.
That's great. Well, this has been fantastic catching up with you. I really enjoyed it. For everyone watching, Volume 3 will be out soon. The first couple singles are already out there. Make sure you check them out. Spotify, Apple Music. Is there anything else the two of you would like to say to rock fans, and maybe also tell them about your website? I haven't plugged that yet.
Sure. I mean, just keep rocking. We are so, and I use this word a lot, so stoked to be doing this again, and to be recording and rehearsing. And Mark and I are going to be seeing each other this Friday, and hopefully we'll do a little rehearsal, maybe work on some new songs. We got new songs we're working on even for the next record. It'll come out in 26 years. So
we're trying, like someone said online, we're trying to beat Tool in the longest term between records.
Yeah. The website is sugartooth.band, BAND, and you can get all your Sugartooth needs there.
Yeah.
We're just
I didn't even know we had a website. Just kidding. Just kidding. No, but I will say, it's I'm feeling loud and proud to return to like the rock community. I feel like, working in the music industry, it's not like cool, but it's always there. There's always a community, like a lifestyle. It's like those are our people, and it feels really good to be waving that flag again and doing it in earnest. It's all very, very like from the heart, and it's the music that we are writing because that's what we do and that's who we are, and it feels really good to be a part of that, being accepted again by the fans, and all of our the peers that we came up with. We came up with Tool in LA, we came up with Rage Against the Machine, we came up with all of these bands, and those are our peers in our community, and it's nice to be like active in it again, and we're very appreciative of the warm welcome we're receiving.
Well, I appreciate you guys are back out there. I was joking that I'm sort of the Kathy Bates of Sugartooth fans. I'm just loved you guys all along. Still listen to all your stuff, but yeah, this is a real treat to have you guys on.
Mrs. Bates, we appreciate you asking us on.
Now let us out of this room.
Yes,
So cold.
that's
I'm so hungry.
right.
We're hungry.
Well, thanks, guys. You guys have a great day. All right.
Thanks,
You
John.
too.
You too.